It is interesting as Secretary of State when I dropped into Lincoln, kind of off the moon, when I was appointed by Governor Johans in December of 2000. I didn't know my staff, and obviously I didn't know the various industries I was going to work with. I knew about the office, but I didn't realize how exciting and dynamic the office would be. It's not an office that you see in the news very often. You'll see some of our press releases about things that we're doing, but by and large, we're not a controversial office. We're not in the news the way some of the other offices are, but the things we do are very, very significant to the citizens of Nebraska, such as being Chief Election Officer, Chief Business Service Officer, Chief Records Manager for state records, as well as the many boards and commissions that I serve on, most of which meet monthly or quarterly. And believe it or not, the Pardons Board is one of the most challenging of all of them, because for each of those meetings we'll have 80 or 85 applications for that meeting, and it will be a stack of material that high. It has to be reviewed by my staff and myself every month to get ready for those. So the Pardons Board really is a challenge, and we do manage to get through those at every meeting. But it's so different from the work we do with the Real Estate Commission. And one of the major differences is your group is so progressive and dynamic, and you make such a difference in our economy and our communities and our lifestyle that it is such a comparison with the Pardons Board, where you're dealing with people who have been through many life crises, many difficulties and challenges, a fracturing of their family relations, a fracturing of their community relations, spending time in prison or on pardon. And it's great to be able to help many of those people and give them a pardon, and if we can, and to move their lives forward. But it's such a contrast between leaving one of those meetings and leaving one of our Real Estate Commission meetings. And I think that's why I have to tell you that of all of the variety of different associations and groups that I deal with as Secretary of State, probably the one that I get the most energy and enthusiasm about is dealing with the realtors of Nebraska. You always are very gracious in inviting my wife Carol and I to your various banquets and events, and I do appreciate being invited to be with you here today. But we've gotten to know so many of your members. You really do have people with very positive, enthusiastic, outgoing personalities, and it's just great fun to be with you at your many meetings. In terms of the commission, I do want to thank those. I see Rita sitting here. Rita really was just such an outstanding member of the Nebraska Real Estate Commission. You really hit a home run when you recommended. And we do miss her, but it's an incredible sacrifice to serve for 6 years on a board or commission that meets every month, and ordinarily will have at least one day, but many times 2-day meetings every month that have to be prepared for. It's just not a matter of showing up. There's probably twice as much time spent getting ready for these meetings as there is actually happening at the meetings. And everybody does come prepared. Everybody does come ready to make decisions. So we weren't sure if Lincoln could find somebody who could fill Rita's shoes. We kept our fingers crossed, and now Drew has been appointed. And it's not a matter of filling her shoes literally, or her high heels, but Drew is doing a great job. He's become very, very actively involved right away, right up to speed, very familiar with the issues that we're dealing with. And I think he's going to be equally outstanding for Lincoln Realtors to represent you. So, as you know, the number of representatives from Omaha and Lincoln varies from commission to commission. And having been on the commission now 11 years, going into my 12th years, I've seen a lot of faces come and go. Sometimes Lincoln's had as many as 3 reps, and sometimes, right now, 1 rep. But if you have a good spokesperson, a person who knows your industry and knows the issues and is willing to speak up, one is an incredibly effective representative, as Rita was and as Drew will be. So thank you both for your service. We calculated that for someone who serves 6 years on the Real Estate Commission, has spent the equivalent of 6 months of work days in the preparation and the attendance of the meeting. So you're committing 6 months of your life, basically, of your work life, if you serve on the commission. So it's a big sacrifice. But
That's why you say no prayers.
But it makes a huge difference. You're not there as honorary members. You're not there simply as figureheads. You're there to do hard work. Now, as chairman of the Real Estate Commission, I've known some of you for a long time, and some I'm just getting acquainted with. Faces kind of change as the industry evolves, but like Darlene Starman sold us our first house in Lincoln. So Darlene's always been one of our near and dear friends, and she did a wonderful job representing you. So it was a great first impression, good first impression of your real estate industry here in Lincoln. With regard to the commission itself, and that's why you really invited me to tell you some of the, I guess, inside information on the Real Estate Commission and what's going on. One thing I'll tell you right up front, because it became a subject of great controversy in the very recent past. The Real Estate Commission decided, because of an interest of one Omaha commissioner, to have a bill drafted to take a look at it and debate and discuss it with regard of whether or not a realtor can pre-sign a listing agreement before the current agreement expires. In other words, you could approach a seller and predate a new listing agreement to take over when the current listing agreement expires. And we were interested in what that would look like if it was drafted. There wasn't any vote taken at all. It was just a decision to take a look at it and see what it looked like. And so it got drafted, but before we knew it, it got on the agenda of the Legislative Committee of the State Realtors Association, and apparently a great debate and discussion there, and a very close vote. And I got as many letters and phone calls about that as I've gotten about anything in the last 10 years, because there's very, very, very strong opposition to the idea. And there was a lot of fear that it was going to go before the legislature in this session. Well, that was way ahead of anybody's thought, and at the current time, it's simply going to be on the agenda at the next meeting, just for discussion, because it was raised as an issue from Omaha, and so we try to give a hearing to suggestions that people have. But frankly, I'm personally opposed to it, and I think the general sentiment of the commission is not going to be favorable to it. But at least it's an idea that will be discussed, and if you have any thought about it, you drop us a note or give us a call. But by and large, I don't think it's going anywhere. It certainly is not being introduced on behalf of the commission in this session. So for those of you who were alarmed by that and the speed with which it kind of came to the industry's attention, that is way ahead of where we are as a commission. So we'll allow the commissioner who had an interest in it to raise his points, make his arguments, and we'll see where that argument goes. But it's just one of those issues. We didn't intend to make it kind of an imminent policy change. It was simply one thing, like many, that we debate and discuss and move on if we don't have a consensus on the commission. So I wanted to kind of put that at rest, and obviously you'll have a representative there during the meeting, and it's a public meeting, so if any of you want to attend and be a part of that, certainly you're entitled to do that. A couple of things that have been accomplished in recent years. As you know, at least from my perspective as chairman, I'm very proactive. I'm very much of a change agent on every board and commission I serve on. I don't believe in the status quo. I don't believe in, well, this is the way we've always done it. This is the way it's always been done. I believe that life is a very dynamic process, and you need to stay ahead of the curve and ride the wave like a surfer, and be sure that you're being as progressive, as efficient, as cost-effective, and driven by good, sound public policy as you can be. So we've made a number of changes during the years that I've been chair, and I hope that some of the changes that I've initiated will continue on in the future. But one is to have a high standard for applicants who want to sit for a license. When I came on to the commission, virtually anybody that had some kind of a criminal conviction would come in for an interview and get granted the right to sit. Well, that's been changed. We have some very, I think, effective policies to ensure that, first of all, that we give a close examination to the criminal record of the applicant, and by interviewing them, we have a pretty good sense of what kind of people they are, whether they really are rehabilitated or not. But in addition to that, if we do allow them to sit, we can require that whoever employs them as a broker is informed and notified of their criminal history. And secondly, that both they and the broker are required to notify us if there's any additional involvement with any kind of a criminal violation. It's just so important to the integrity of your industry and the confidence of the public that we don't license people who have a criminal history, particularly involving violence or serious driving records, or drunk driving records, or people who have been involved in financial misappropriation or scandal. The likelihood of that repeating is a danger, a risk to all of you, so we do watch very closely at those. We also now require criminal background checks on all applicants, which wasn't true 10 years ago. So I think our standard for applicants has risen considerably. Now, it's not to say that some don't get granted the right to sit, but it's a very thorough vetting before they're allowed to do so. So we think that that's been a big step forward. In terms of the hearing procedures, I don't know, of course, what the talk is, what the anecdotal conversation is amongst all of you, but our goal has been to have very fair, open, accountable proceedings for anyone who comes before us with a complaint. In other words, we don't treat people as a criminal. It's a civil violation. It is not a criminal violation. And we ensure that we follow court procedures and court standards of evidence, and that we always have open discussions about finding whether there's been a violation and what penalty to assume. Now, that is not required by law. We can go into closed session to do that, but we want people to know our discussion, what we say, what we think, and why we impose a violation or impose a penalty. So I think we're very open and very accountable, and we have very vigorous discussions about those issues. And I think, I hope that our reputation is one of being very fair-minded, and that we do allow due process of law for anybody who comes before us. Whether you have a lawyer or don't have a lawyer, you'll get treated the same, fairly at all times. And then we'll make our decision based on the evidence before us and not by any prejudice or bias or anything that we may have. And commissioners are very good about recusing themselves if they think they have a potential conflict. And that helps assure the fairness of the system. So